Alright, since contributions to this thread are at a standstill, be me. I was around 16 years old when this one happened. Me and a few buddies have just gotten off school on winter break and have decided to go in the woods. I bring along some MREs, some water, and of course, zebra cakes. I also bring weapons. Our arsenal included 2 bolt-action hunting rifles, a weeboo sword, and an axe. In hindsight, maybe we should have stuck to the old treehouse. About 4 miles into the woods, we found an axe stuck into the side of a tree. Being teenage morons, we thought this was awesome. We took it, of course. I think it might still be in my dad's garage somewhere. We walked for about another mile. Hey look, a dog skin. Wait, what the fuck? There is a dog skin nailed to a tree. Whatever, it was probably just a trail marker from some lost hikers, said no one ever. We pressed on regardless. We get about another 4 miles into the woods. We had hit our little oasis, and by oasis, I mean a small cave with a nearby stream. We were absolute weirdos who like to act like cavemen, so we had left some mock-up cave paintings that we did with deer blood. Like I said, we were complete weirdos. But there was a new one in there, one that we didn't do. We shat bricks when we saw a little drawing representing us on our little 9-hour hike. Some creepy asshole had depicted everything. There was a drawing of us pulling the axe out of the tree, and one of us finding the dog skin, all done in fresh deer blood. The hopes that our little sanctuary in the very back was untouched was met with the sight of a deer's head mounted on a rock at the very back. Naturally, we were complete weirdos, and we just laughed it off and buried the deer head. So, of course, we were gonna keep on camping in the cave. We just slept in shifts. The little part of the cave that we slept in was slightly elevated. You had to crawl through a tunnel which had a 2-foot incline. It led into, and yes, we measured it, a 10-foot by 8-foot by 6-foot area of the cave. The wonderful part about the tunnel was it wasn't really that crammed. It was actually quite spacious, and you could crouch all the way through. We used a battery-powered heater and thermal sleeping bags because suffocating sounds like an awful plan. We cooked in the main cave, same place we put those weird-ass paintings. We were on day 3 of our planned 2-week camping trip. We had added a few more cave paintings and had cooked some deer. The MREs are just for an emergency if we can't get a kill. But anyway, we were sitting around, snacking on deer, and I had made a zebra cake and venison sandwich. It was fantastic, by the way. We were about to start telling stories, and all of a sudden, one of us looks outside of the cave and says, "Holy fuck, everyone look." We look outside the cave and everyone panics. There is a guy, with an axe, wearing the same dog skin from earlier. I guess he was tanning it like a moron. The dude has nothing else on at all. His dick is just hanging out. This dude is not so much as wearing a pair of boots. He looks like a caveman himself. All of us are just losing our shit. Rifles were raised, shots were fired, and the guy just smiled. He smiled and rushed us, even though we had weapons. Everyone's pants were completely full once we were done. The guy vanishes into the air about 4 feet away from the cave entrance. We settle down after an hour of panic and finish our food. 6 teenage boys ate a whole entire deer. Who knew? We crawled into our little fortress, and feeling like supreme fat asses, went to sleep. The next morning when we woke up, the deer bones were gone. Instead, there was a human skeleton with the dog skin on it. At this point, one of us actually shits his pants. There was a new painting on the wall, just a big smile. We still don't know what was going on, but we had state troopers up there within an hour. They brought the helicopter and everything. This was before the internet was a big thing, so I'm assuming the article is not online. Turns out the guy was a hiker who went missing in 1970. The skull was fractured, but not to the point where it was fatal. They thought he had gotten a concussion after a fall and forgotten who he was and where he was. It's kind of sad, but now I can say that me and my buddies shot at a ghost. Be out in bumfuck Wisconsin. Grandpa is at a family cabin fixing a few things. Me and my good friend Darren go up there to lend a hand. Maybe do some fishing the next day before we take off. We helped Grandpa chop and stack some firewood, solder broken pipes, and rewire the TV outlet. In the cabin that night, me and Aaron sit and chill with Grandpa. Grandpa was injured in World War II in 1944. He spent the rest of the war guarding POWs. The camp these POWs were at was about 45 minutes away, and another hour of trail riding from there in the middle of nowhere. Grandpa still knew by heart what road and what markers were out there. After leaving Hemlock Road, turn left onto a dirt path. You will come to a boulder on your left. Go 1 mile up and turn right. Go down that logging road for about 20 minutes. Come to a fork with an old oak tree. Turn left at the tree. Keep going another 20 or so minutes. You go to a clearing, and on the far right end is the path. Drive another 10 minutes. Then you hit the perimeter gate, 100 yards outside the main fence. Then you are there. Me and Aaron are taking notes. We both agree to spend the night at the camp if it is still there, or we get lost. Leave early the next morning and fill the back of my Silverado with camping gear. Also taking Grandpa's Marlin 3030 and his Ruger Blackhawk 44 mag, in case of bear. So we leave early, like 7 a.m. early. On the road until we hit the logging trails. We find the boulder just like Grandpa said. It's painted heavy in graffiti. We turn onto the other trail until we come to a fork clear cut. The oak tree is a rotting stump. Like 10 years ago, the place was clear cut. We continue on our way. We reach the clearing and drive around the clearing. There is no road to be found. We get out and search the entire right side. We find a deer trail. It's big enough to fit the truck, but it's hitting a lot of brush. There is some gravel and sand where the path used to be. We follow the path and reach a rusty fence. It's all knocked down and abandoned. There are several wooden buildings standing. The rest have caved in or are covered in moss. The forest is slowly reclaiming it. We find one tower still standing. We try to climb it, only to see the wood break in several places. Nope, not doing that. We check out some of the buildings. We check the commandant's office. We kick the door open. Find a safe. It's empty. The file cabinets are empty. We expect to find some Nazi medals, gold, and other trinkets. We check out the barracks. We find SS and swastikas carved into bunks. We find this rusty tarnish badge with leaves and cross grenades. We find a soldier's POW ID under some floorboards. We agree to sleep in the best looking building, which was the third barracks and closest to the gate. We start a fire in the old wood stove that still worked. We chill on these old bunk beds and share a bottle of brandy that we got from the cabin. Life is good. We fall asleep like 30 minutes later. Then I hear the sound of boots on a wooden floor and shuffling. I jump up. My friend is also awake. He says, "Dude, did you hear footsteps?" I nod. I grab the Marlin 3030 and Ruger 44. It sounds like the footsteps are coming from the back of the barracks. We shine lights and see nothing. The boots stop. We get out of the bunks and sleep next to the glow of the wood stove for safety. Sleep with one eye open. It's like 4 a.m. now. It feels like someone just kicked me in the ribs. I look up to see this figure standing over me. So this figure has just stood over me. I assume it's a park ranger or a game warden. The figure starts yelling, "Get your ass up, get the hell out." I run outside of the barracks. I stand outside in the cold for like 15 minutes. Nobody else comes outside. Not Aaron, not even the guy who kicked me out. I go back inside. Aaron is sleeping peacefully. What the actual fuck? I go back to sleep. I try to sleep, only to hear the sound of people holding a conversation in German. I wake up to Aaron waking me up at 6 a.m. "Dude, some guy just kicked me." That is enough nope for one day. Aaron and myself pack up and are out of there in less than 10 minutes. We just drive until we have to stop for gas. We are both chain smoking. Grandpa asked me if I found it. I told him no, the place is gone. Me and Grandpa have never spoke of it since. Be one of the first times drinking with my best friend. We were about 14 years old at the time. We are camping in the backyard of my house. We live on 15 acres with another 3 square miles of woodlands behind it. The nearest neighbor is about a half a mile away. We are sitting in the tent, just chilling, talking about little kid stuff. We hear rustling out in the woods near the tent. I think it might be my dad trying to scare us, but we set the tent up about 500 yards away from the house and he's kinda lazy. I open up the tent flaps, expecting to see my dad trying to be scary. Nothing is there. I leave the flaps open to air out the tent. After a few minutes, my friend says he saw something moving around in the shadows. I tell him to shut the fuck up and roll a joint, in before edge. I was really drunk at the time. He starts rolling the joint with light from flashlight. Looking outside of the tent, you could not see any lights at all. I suddenly spot a coyote-sized shadow stalking through the trees. I point it out to my friend and he flips his shit. He shines the flashlight in the direction. It looks deformed and mangy. It runs off with a really weird gallop, almost like a bear's. We tell ourselves it was just an injured coyote. We smoke the joint. We close the tent flaps and lay it in the sleeping bags. We hear rustling again. What? I really do not want to open up the tent flaps. The noise was right next to our tent for about 10 minutes. It finally wanders off. I eventually fall asleep. Friend told me the next day that after I fell asleep, he could hear something moving around outside the tent. I guess he only got a couple of hours of sleep because the noises did not stop completely until the sun started to come up. In the woods, but not cryptid. I was around 15 years old when this one happened. I am chilling in the woods with my friends on the weekends. The woods aren't typical woods and are more like grounds of this big mansion that no one lives in. The only people who hang around there are the kids of the time, which at this point were me and my friends. We have a fire, get drunk, smoke some weed. They are good times. One week I have to visit family, so I'm not meeting them until later on. I go straight there when I get back. I go to the usual spot, but they are not there. It's not uncommon to move to a different section if we are bored of one. I carry on walking, listening for them, and looking for comfy firelight. I finally find them, a lot closer to the mansion than we would usually go, and in a much bigger opening than is needed. I stop in the tree line and crouch down. These are not my friends. There is about a dozen people wearing robes, the kind that monks would wear, not the bathroom kind, standing in a circle around a fire. One of them starts speaking some mumbo-jumbo. They all start chanting some mumbo-jumbo. There is a surprised chicken in the hands of the one who was talking. I start running back the way I came. I'm not sure if they chased me because I did not stop or look back, but they definitely would have known I was there. I go on MSN. I would leave my computer on at the time, and I already had a message from friend from earlier. They'd already been to the woods, but got chased out by people wearing black, and that I should not go there, because they are not there. Turns out that the mansion was not even abandoned the way that we all thought it was. We still went back after, but never saw them again. I was actually going to go in the woods for like 3 days about last week, and I was thinking how I actually know a good place to do so about a mile away. So I start getting my supplies together, such as a machete, food supplies, and my bows and arrows, so I could hunt for more food or take what I can carry from the animal or whatever for whatever I was going to make. So, as I was saying, getting ready for my inner woods fun, got my gear, and getting all settled, making sure that my animals have enough food until I get back. Now that I had all of my gear set, I am ready to head out and go for the walk to my destination. When I walked out of my house door and got done making sure the animals had enough food for the 3 days, I started to walk when I noticed that they were all acting up, such as my dog kept staring at a tree, which actually looked pretty suspicious and gave off a creepy vibe, and that my chickens were just not doing anything, as if they had turned to stone. Plus, my cat kept staring outside the house window looking at the tree. I just decided to ignore the feeling, but decided to grab 5 extra arrows just in case. So now I started to begin my walk towards the location of the woods that I was going to camp in, and when I was walking through the field to get there, I just could not stop looking behind me. I kept thinking that something was following me with the intent of trying to harm me, but I just shrugged it off as me being paranoid. Within 30 to 46 minutes I had gotten to the destination, finally happy that I felt refreshed and enjoyed that I was going to be in this fresh, nice woods, but of course, with every ounce of something good, there was also bad things hiding among the good ones, and that's when I looked at the clouds. Mushroom clouds, tall and limbering, grouping together and getting ready to form a storm. So as soon as I saw this, I thought that I should probably get my tent up as soon as I can, then possibly hunt and check what else I can find. Maybe some cool scenery, maybe a cave. So I had set up my tent, and still had time before the storm would be near me at all, so I went hunting for some animals. Luckily, I got myself a rabbit I could cook and found some berries that were safe to eat, and they actually tasted pretty good, so I made a tiny little rabbit and berry soup. After just sitting around for 15 minutes, I noticed that the storm had completely passed over me and, luckily, had not ruined my day of exploring. So I thought that I should go looking for some scenery, or more of those delicious berries, or another rabbit. When I was walking around, I got that feeling of something tracking me down again, but it left quickly. All in all, I only caught 2 more rabbits and a handful of those berries, and left with a tiny makeshift camp that I built earlier. Now I was at the camp, and it was about 10:23, so I decided to just have another bowl of soup, along with berry-flavored water, to wash it down, and then I just fell asleep. I woke up to something eerie, yet familiar. It was a blood-freezing scream, so loud and so horrible that I just froze in place, and heard the sound of another scream, that of a small rabbit. Then there was the sound of blood spilling, and bones crushing, and then slurping. Doing what could have gotten me killed, I looked out of the bottom of the tent flap. I saw something that made me just want to run to the hills, and never stop running after that. When I looked outside, I saw this sorta 6'7" looking black and grey creature, slurping on that poor bunny's blood and guts. Then it just threw it towards a branch and spiked it. When the rabbit was finally dead, and the creature was satisfied with its food, it started walking towards my tent. I slowly backed away to where the sleeping bag was and pulled it over me, so I could try and hide and not meet my death, and just stayed still. It was there, sniffing and looking around, apparently unhappy that I was not there, letting out yet another scream, and since I could hear it so closely, it sounded like this. Imagine the sound from every monster from Amnesia combined, and played backwards, while a tiny high-pitched scream, hard to hear, was heard along with it. After those following events, I took a not so comfortable nap and only got 30 minutes in. So I just thought how wonderful it would be to just go hunting and ease my mind off. And I was walking when all of a sudden a moose just bolts as fast as it can across a clearing, and then it was gone. I looked to see what spooked it, and there it was, just standing there, looking me dead in the eyes, and as if it couldn't get worse, it smiled. Started waving like I was his friend that he had not seen in a long time. Tired of this thing trying to taunt me, I decided to shoot it in the elbow, and then boom. It started wailing its arm and screaming, all the while looking at me. I guess this thing was now pissed, and it started running towards me, and it was actually pretty fast. But I managed to get it in the knee, and it fell pretty hard, so now that I had the chance to start running from this, I took the chance and did so. I never stopped running, and by the time I reached the field, I took a breath and looked to see if it was following me. It wasn't near me, but I saw it near the edge of the woods, just sitting there and smiling again, so I just up and left as fast as I could. So now I was heading home, thinking about what kind of gun I should get, as using my bow was not the best thing to use if I went in the woods again. So now I was home, and I noticed that the tree was gone. The fucking tree was gone. It was watching me walk the entire time, blending in with the trees. And that concludes what happened when I went in the woods. I hope that thing is dead by now, and I did try to go there again and find it, but it either left or went off into hiding or died. Speaking of in the woods, any of you guys got a good recommendation for a new weapon? Been thinking of getting a crossbow or maybe a handgun? All in all, it was fun times in the woods until Creep McDead showed up. I also forgot to mention what the creature looked like, and the only interesting features about it was the fact that it had sharp, long claws. Its skin was tight on its entire body, grey and black for its color, slits for eyes, and its head looked like a hybrid of a human and animal. I could not tell. Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. I used to live in Dawley, a small town within the borough of Telford, in the West Midlands, UK. I was 8 at the time this happened. I lived within a 2-minute walk to the woods. Me and my childhood friend Frankie, who lived a few doors down from me, decided that the best place to play football was the grass field next to the woods. So I agreed, and we went to play football. After around 20 minutes of football, we got bored, and I come up with the genius idea of making a secret den in the woods. We began walking into the woods, which we had been in many times. We decided that we should go to the part of the woods that we had not been to before. We walked along one of the dirt tracks and stopped to climb a small tree which did not have much of a trunk. It had large branches stemming out at around a foot high. After getting bored again, we started walking deeper into the part we had not been in before. There was a sudden drop into a small crater. Intrigued, I walked round the drop to a dirt path that connected to the bottom of the crater. There was some sort of stone foundations, like a wall. At the bottom of the wall, I noticed something orange. I approached it and realized that it was a fox pelt. It was pretty cool. It was the first dead animal I had ever seen in my life, so I called my friend down. He walked around the drop to the dirt path the same way I did. When he got to the bottom, he told me he heard some metal screeching coming from further down the dirt path. I didn't really care though. I was more fascinated by the dead fox in front of me. I picked up a stick and started poking the torso of the fox. Don't ask. We all do stupid stuff when we're little. The last time I poked it, the pelt rolled over. I froze. Frankie froze. We turned and faced each other with fright in our eyes. It was a skull. A human skull. We grabbed the football and ran back to his house. His 17-year-old brother was the only person in the house. After calming down, we asked him about the big dip in the woods, as we called it back then. He told us it was called the witch's parlor, and that back in the 1500s and 1600s, witches used to take refuge in the woods when being hunted. 9 years later, I add my childhood friend on Facebook. We start talking, and get on really well, because he told me that he had been smoking weed for 2 years, and at that time, I smoked weed as well. He asked to meet up, and so we did, and decided that I would sleep at his house, the same house in which just a few doors down from my old house. We got stoned, played on his Xbox 360, and started having a childhood memory talk. I brought up the skull under the pelt, and he said he remembered. He told me he had a nightmare that same night that we went to the witch's parlor. He explained his nightmare was walking the same route into the woods, but there was a third person. He described the person as a pure black shadow figure with no face, eyes, mouth, or ears. After the pelt had rolled over, he said the shadow figure's face suddenly turned into a horrifying pure white face with pitch black eyes, burnt lips. It began screaming, in which he could only describe as a distorted cat screech. That was when he woke up. Alright X, let me give you a story about something freaky that happened in the woods on a farm about 5 years ago. I was a 17-year-old farm boy. Our place was about a mile away from our nearest neighbor and 10 miles from the nearest town. My parents had taken a trip with my aunt to Vegas for a week and left me to run the place with the dogs. There had always been some weird stuff going on around the farm. Animals going missing, animals turning up torn up, weird tracks, etc. Dad and Grandpa always told me it was coyotes, but after I had gotten a bit older, they had told me there had also been sightings of bobcats and mountain lions back in the area for the first time in over 50 years, but the DNR boys would never admit to it, even with trail cam footage of them. I had been taking nightly walks for a couple of years, but never farther than the big lamplight would show. One night I start walking, and go away from the farm and the light. It was a full moon and there was fresh snow on the ground. Everything was clear for miles, and you could see like it was almost daylight, and something possessed my dumb ass to go out there in the middle of the winter by myself. My dogs would usually come with me on little walks like this, but they were nowhere to be found. I figured they were out hunting little rodents or something, so I left without them. I walked the path along our empty cornfields, and down the path that led to our pasture. It was about a quarter of a mile downhill walk. Down in this pasture, there is a canyon and a creek that runs through the whole thing, from our end of the property all the way to the next county. Inside of this, there is a pretty sizable forest with huge old trees all the way down. It was one of those places that was perfect to grow up near. I spent a lot of time down there throughout my life, and never really had anything out of the ordinary happen. I had my headphones in, and was listening to some hammerfall. I was just enjoying how cool everything was, and how lit up everything seemed, even past the tree line. I figured me being just over 6 foot tall, and an overly cocky weightlifter, I didn't have anything to worry about around there. So, dumbass me went down to the next creek bed, in the middle of winter, alone and unarmed. Mistake number 1. I followed the creek for quite a ways, until I ended up at a part of the bed where the banks and walls of this little canyon were too angled to climb up, and there were not any paths out. I stopped for a little bit and watched the moon and stars, just admiring it all. Don't think I'll ever forget how pretty everything was. About that time, I ended up turning my music off, just to take it all in. I guess it wasn't cold enough for the creek to freeze all the way, and every little sound out there in this place just echoed on top of the little sounds of the running water. The whole place just made every one of my scenes feel exaggerated. I stood there for about a minute or two when I started to get this horrible feeling in the pit of my gut, like the most terrible thing in the world was going to happen any second. I looked around a bit, did not want to freak myself out over nothing, so I gave it a short time. That was mistake number 2. I should have just walked out of there. At this point, I started to hear something moving through the snow and brush on the other side of the creek. I'm pretty sure if it had been any other time or place, I would not have noticed it. It was so damn quiet, besides that little trickle of water. I started to look around, and spotted a little bit of brush moving a few yards from the side of the creek bed. The only sounds were those exaggeratedly amped up steps, causing the thin coat of ice to crack and snap on the long grass near the shore. I won't lie, every horror story and terrible thing I've heard about run through my head, and I ended up just being stuck there, unable to move away, while this thing continued to creep out along the bank. I hadn't even seen it, and suddenly, I just had the worst fear that I ever had in my life to this day. Finally, this thing came out, and by God, I almost pissed myself. This big black dog-looking thing came crawling out near the creek on all fours. It was so big, I don't know how the hell it had moved so quickly. It kept walking along in the open, before it stuck its muzzle down in the creek and started to drink. I just stood there, glued to the spot. The whole place seemed to get darker with every second. About this time, I felt the cold for the first time that night, while this chill ran down my spine. Stupid me shivered. Mistake number 3. I had big copper buttons on my coat, and a couple of them brushed against each other. It had to be such an insignificant sound, but down there, it seemed like I had hit a tin roof with a hammer. The thing perked its ears up and raised its head to look at me. God, its eyes. I've never seen anything that green before. We stared each other down for a few moments, and then this thing growled. About this point, I finally snapped out of it and began to back away, trying to get back out of this boxed-in space and away from this thing. This thing started to bare its teeth and growl more aggressively. And then, I shit you not, it stood up on its hind legs a bit, raising its front paws up to its side. Only, they weren't paws. They were like hands. I thought I was going crazy or something, but I kept slowly backing off, every step getting me a little bit closer to the path, leading out of the canyon and the creek. But even then I still had a long way back to the house. This thing just kept watching me like it wanted me to just back away and leave for the first few steps. Then it started walking along the other side of the creek, matching my pace, just slowly stalking me out. I was shitting my pants and breathing heavily, but somehow managed to not lose my head and run. I think if I had done that, I would not have made it out. Finally, I made it to the open area. Just had to get up this little hill and make it across the pasture. Then it was only a quarter of a mile up another hill to home. I did not turn my back on this thing and continued to back my way out and up the hill. This thing did not seem to want to cross over the creek from the position it was at, but it kept walking. About the time I made it to the top and was looking down at this dogman thing, it had made it to a more shallow spot down at the creek bed and began to cross. At this point I knew I had to pick up the pace. I finally turned and began to quickly walk to the pasture gate as quickly as I could. I scrambled over the gate and looked back again. It was at the top on all fours again, still watching me with those eyes and teeth. All that was between me and this thing was a barbed wire fence, a panel gate, and 20 yards. That's when I heard the best sounds I've ever heard in my life, loud padding coming across the field. All 3 of my dogs were coming full speed down the hill, raising hell. I looked back, and this thing turned and stalked back down the smaller hill. I figured I was in the clear, and took off like a fucking rocket. It ran a 1/4 mile in nearly 4 inches of snow in winter gear. I passed my dogs on the way up, and they did not stop or turn to meet me. They just bolted down the way after this thing. What felt like an hour of running up this hill, I made it back to my home, and almost passed out on the floor. I locked the doors, and ran to grab something to defend myself. I figured that my hunting knives were not going to cut it, so I went to the gun safe. Only guns in the house, a great-granddad's old double-barrel 20 gauge, a 22, and an old pump-action Remington 3006, with a box of 40-year-old ammo that had a horrible jamming problem. I grabbed the shotgun and loaded 2 shells before shoving a couple of fistfuls into my pockets. I just sat there in the kitchen with a death grip on this gun for hours before I finally heard my dogs barking outside the house. I looked out the window onto the porch and saw all 3 of them without a scratch. I dropped down onto my ass and cried like a child, not sure what to think. I did not want to go out there again, and I didn't until the next morning. I stumbled out the door with the gun and looked around. My boys came up panting, with their tails wagging, and I loved on them and petted them until my body was numb from cold. I made sure that they got some hot meat that night as a thank you. I've seen this thing a few more times since then, but this was the first time. The only people who know about this are a couple of my closest friends. Hell of a story. I don't live on that farm anymore at the moment, but that thing turned what was my little retreat into a nightmare.